Hey everyone, welcome back. If you are new here, I'm so glad that you found this channel. Today we're going to dive into something super useful, okay, for students, professionals, or anyone who takes part, in group discussions. Whether it's a classroom or a meeting or even an online hangout, okay. So what's this video about? We'll explore, okay, a set of helpful expressions, okay, that will make your conversation smoother, help you share your ideas clearly, and encourage everyone, okay, to participate. I'll break down, okay, category by category, explain the purpose of each expression and give you examples, okay, so you can start using right away. Before we jump in, okay, don't forget to hit this like button, okay. If you find this helpful, please subscribe for more language and communication tips. And click the bell, okay, so you don't miss any future videos. Ready? Let's go. ሰላም ለሁላችሁም። ዛሬ በቡድን ውይይት ወቅት እንግዲህ እንዴት አድርጋችሁ ጠቃሚ አገላለጾች መጠቀም እንደምንችል ነው የምንማረው። እነዚህ አገላለጾች እንግዲህ ውይይታችሁ ለስላሳ ያደርጉታል፣ ሀሳባችሁን በግልጽ በማካፈል ይረዳሉ፣ እንዲሁም ሁሉም እንዲሳተፍ ያበረታታሉ። እያንዳንዱ ምድብ በቅደም ተከተል እንመለከታለን። መልካም ቆይታ። ኦፕኒንግ ኮንትሪቢዩሽንስ፣ የመክፈቻ አገላለጾች። When you want to start the discussion, use this polite and confident phrase. I would like to start by saying, to kick things off, I believe that let's begin our discussion with, I want to share my thoughts on. እንግዲህ ውይይት ልትጀምሩ በምትፈልጉበት ጊዜ እነዚህን አገላለጾች ትጠቀማላችሁ። እነዚህ ውይይቱን በአክብሮትና በራስ መተማመን እንደምትጀምሩ ያሳያሉ። sharing ideas፣ ሀሳቦችን ወይም ሀሳብን ማካፈል። to share your own opinion, try these expressions. I think that, in my opinion, from my perspective, what I believe is that, የራስን አስተያየት ለማካፈል እነዚህን ተጠቀም። የግል አመለካከትን እንደምትገልጽ ያሳያሉ። ሌሎችም በአክብሮት ምላሽ እንዲሰጡ ያበረታታሉ። Number 3, asking questions. ጥያቄዎችን ማቅረብ። Questions keep the discussion alive, okay? Use these phrases. What do you think about? Can someone elaborate on? How does everyone feel about? Does anyone have thoughts on? ጥያቄዎች ውይይቱን ንቁ ያደርጉታል። እነዚህ ጥያቄዎች ሌሎች ሀሳባቸውን እንዲያካፍሉ ይጋብዛሉ። አስተያየታቸውን እንደምትፈልጉትም ይጠቁማሉ ማለት ነው። Number 4, building on others' ideas. ሌሎች በሰጡት ሀሳብ ላይ ገንቢ ሀሳብ መጨመር። One of the most powerful skills is, by the way, to build on what others say. Use these expressions. That's a great point. I would like to add, I completely agree, and I would also like to mention, following up on what Mr. X said, I believe that, or that reminds me of, blah, blah, blah. በሌሎች አባባል ላይ እንግዲህ ገንቢ ሀሳብ መስጠት ማለት በጣም ጠቃሚ ችሎታ ነው። በነገራችን ላይ ይህ በጥንቃቄ ማዳመጥንና በትብብር ወይም በጋራ መስራት እንደምትችሉ ያሳያል። Number 5, agreeing and disagreeing. መስማማትና አለመስማማት። ስንስማማ you agree politely, yes, I agree with you because እንላለን. Or you can even disagree respectfully. That makes sense. However, while I see your point, I think that I respect your opinion, but I have a different view. እንግዲህ በአክብሮት ለመስማማትና ላለመስማማት እነዚህን አገላለጾች እንጠቀማለን። ይህ ውይይቱ በጥሩ ሁኔታ እንዲቀጥል ያደርጋል። Number 6, providing examples. ምሳሌዎችን መስጠት። Examples make your ideas concrete. Start with, for instance, a good example of this is, let's consider the case of, this can be illustrated by. So ምሳሌዎች እንግዲህ ሀሳብን ተጨባጭ ያደርጉታል። ይህ ሌሎች ነጥባቸውን በግልጽ እንዲረዱ ይረዳል ማለት ነው። Number 7, clarifying points. ነጥቦችን ማብራሪያ መጠየቅ። If something isn't clear, ask politely. Can you clarify what you mean by? I'm not sure I understand. Could you explain that further? What do you mean when you say? Or could you give an example of? እንግዲህ አንድ ነገር ግልጽ ካልሆነ በአክብሮት መጠየቅ ጥሩ ነው። ይህ በትኩረት እያዳመጡ ሙሉ ግንዛቤ ለማግኘት እንደሚፈልጉ ያሳያል ማለት ነው። Number 8, transitioning between topics. ከርዕሰ ጉዳይ ወደ ርዕሰ ጉዳይ መሸጋገር። When you need to move on to a new topic, use these expressions. Now let's move on to shifting gears. I would like to discuss, in addition to that, let's also consider እነዚህ የሽግግር ሐረጎች እንግዲህ ውይይቱን በተደራጀ ሁኔታ ያያይዙታል። Number 9 summarizing contributions የተነሱትን ነጥቦች ማጠቃለል። Summarizing helps the group stay on track. Say for example, to summarize what we have discussed so far, in summary, overall we touched on several important points. Let's recap the main ideas ብሎ መጀመር ወይም ማለት። ማጠቃለል እንግዲህ ቡድኑ በትኩረት እንዲቀጥል ይረዳል። ይህ በትኩረት እያዳመጡ መሆኑን ያሳያል ማለት ነው። Number 10 encouraging participation ሁሉንም እንዲሳተፉ ማበረታታት. To make sure everyone has a voice, use these expressions. I would love to hear from others on this topic. What does everyone think about? Let's make sure everyone has a chance to speak. I encourage you to share your thoughts. ይህ ደግሞ ሁሉም እንዲሳተፍ የሚያበረታታ ሁኔታን ይፈጥራል። Number 11 handling silence ወይም pause. ዝምታ ሲኖር ደግሞ እንዴት ነው የምናስተናግደው? Silence is natural by the way, so you can say, does anyone have anything to add? Let's take a moment to think about that. I know this is a complex topic. Take your time. Feel free to jump in whenever you are ready. ብሎ ማለት ዝምታ ተፈጥሯዊ ነው። እነዚህ ሐረጎች ሰዎችን ሳትጫኑ እንዲያስቡ ጊዜ ይሰጣሉ። Number 12 expressing uncertainty እርግጠኛ አለመሆንን መግለጽ እንዴት ነው? It's okay by the way not to have all the answers. Use these expressions, I'm not entirely sure but I think that ማለት That's a tough question I would say. To be honest, I'm still processing this but I need to think about that, but my initial thought is ሁሉንም መልስ እንግዲህ ማወቅ አይጠበቅብንም። እነዚህ ሐረጎች ሐቀኝነትን ያሳያሉ፣ እንዲሁም ውይይቱ ክፍት እንዲሆን ያደርጋሉ። Number 13 concluding the discussion ነው እንግዲህ 13ኛ ውይይቱን መዝጋት። To end this discussion, say, as we wrap up, let's consider to sum up our discussion today. In closing, I think we've established that Thank you all for your contributions. This has been enlightening. ጥሩ መደምደሚያ እንግዲህ ረጅም ትውስታን ትቶ ያልፋል። Number 14 reflecting on group dynamics የቡድን እንቅስቃሴ ወይም ውይይትን ማንሰላሰል እዛ ላይ ሀሳብ መስጠት ወይም ማንጸባረቅ after the discussion reflect together. I appreciate everyone's input. It's been really valuable ማለት It's interesting to see how our views differ. I think we have built a strong understanding of this topic together. Working collaboratively has really enriched our discussion. ብሎ ማለት ይህ አዎንታዊ የቡድን እንግዲህ ባህልን ይፈጥራል ማለት ነው። Conclusion. That's a wrap. Using these expressions regularly will help you become more fluent, confident, and effective in group discussions. Practice them, Encourage your peers to use them, and you will see how your conversations become more engaging and collaborative. It is my challenge to you. In your next group discussion, whether it's at work, school, or even with friends, try using at least 3 of these expressions. Then come back and tell me in the comments, which ones worked best for you. If this video helped you, give it a thumb up. Share it with someone, who could use a confidence boost in discussions. And subscribe for more practical English and communication tips. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate your time. Stay curious, stay confident, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. እነዚህን አገላለጾች በየጊዜው በመጠቀም በቡድን ውይይት የመናገር ችሎታችሁ በራስ መተማመናችሁና ውጤታማነታችሁ ይጨምራል። ውይይታችሁ እንዴት የበለጠ ማራኪ እንደሚሆን ትመለከታላችሁ። አመሰግናለሁ። መልካም ውይይት። Welcome back. You're about to hear the previous text read aloud in the standard English pronunciation. Follow along with the written words on your screen. Listen carefully to the rhythm, stress, and sounds of each sentence. Repeat any part you like. This is a key step, by the way, for your immersion phase, hearing and seeing the language together, Let's begin. አሁን ደግሞ ቀደም ብዬ እንግዲህ በእጅ ጽሑፍ ያቀረብኩትን አገላለጽ በመደበኛ የእንግሊዝኛ አጠራር እና አነባበብ ሊሰሙት ነው። ስለዚህ በስክሪኑ ላይ ያሉትን የተጻፉ ቃላት በደንብ ይከታተሉ። እያንዳንዱን አረፍተ ነገር ምት፣ ጥብቀት፣ መላላትና ድምጾች ሳይቀር በጥንቃቄ ያዳምጡ። ደጋግሞ በማንበብ ይለማመዱ። ይሄ እንግዲህ ዘልቆ ለመግባት ወይም ደግሞ ኢመርሽን ፌዝ ለሚባለው ቁልፍ እርምጃ ነው። ቋንቋውን እንግዲህ ያው በደንብ አንድ ላይ በመስማትና በማየት በደንብ ሊማሩበት እንዲችሉ ተደርጎ የተሰራ ነው። ይህን ማድረግ ስላለባችሁ ነው። ደጋግማችሁ አዳምጡት። መልካም ቆይታ።
Opening contributions. I'd like to start by saying, to kick things off, I believe that. Let's begin our discussion with. I want to share my thoughts on sharing ideas. I think that, in my opinion, from my perspective, what I believe is that asking questions. What do you think about? Can someone elaborate on? How does everyone feel about? Does anyone have thoughts on building on others' ideas? That's a great point, I'd like to add. I completely agree, and I'd also like to mention. Following up on what Naeem said, I believe that. That reminds me of agreeing and disagreeing. I agree with you because that makes sense. While I see your point, I think that I respect your opinion, but I have a different view. Providing examples. For instance, a good example of this is, let's consider the case of, this can be illustrated by clarifying points. Can you clarify what you mean by? I'm not sure I understand, could you explain that further? What do you mean when you say? Could you give an example of transitioning between topics? Now, let's move on to shifting gears, I'd like to discuss. In addition to that, let's also consider summarizing contributions. To summarize what we've discussed so far. In summary, overall, we've touched on several important points. Let's recap the main ideas. Encouraging participation. I'd love to hear from others on this topic. What does everyone think about? Let's make sure everyone has a chance to speak. I encourage you to share your thoughts. Handling silence or pauses. Does anyone have anything to add? Let's take a moment to think about that. I know this is a complex topic, take your time. Feel free to jump in whenever you're ready. Expressing uncertainty. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that. That's a tough question, I would say. To be honest, I'm still processing this, but I need to think about that, but my initial thought is concluding the discussion. As we wrap up, let's consider. To sum up our discussion today. In closing, I think we've established that. Thank you all for your contributions, this has been enlightening. Reflecting on group dynamics. I appreciate everyone's input, it's been really valuable. It's interesting to see how our views differ. I think we've built a strong understanding of this topic together. Working collaboratively has really enriched our discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to start by saying that this is a very important topic for all of us.
To kick things off, I believe that we need to be honest about how the rising prices are affecting our daily lives.
Let's begin our discussion with a simple question. How has your household budget changed in the last 6 months?
I want to share my thoughts on this from a health perspective. When food is expensive, nutrition is the first thing families sacrifice.
I think that the government should control the prices of basic goods like oil, sugar, and teff.
In my opinion, it is not just about prices. It is also about jobs. Many young people in my community have no work.
From my perspective, as someone who runs a small shop, the problem is also the middlemen. They buy from farmers cheaply and sell to us at high prices.
What I believe is that we need better data. We need to know exactly why prices are going up so we can find the right solution.
What do you think about the role of inflation? Is it just a local problem, or is it global?
Can someone elaborate on how price controls actually work? I am not sure they always help.
How does everyone feel about the idea of urban farming? Could growing our own food reduce costs?
Does anyone have thoughts on why transportation costs are so high? That affects everything we buy.
That's a great point about global inflation. I'd like to add that the war in Ukraine has affected wheat prices here in Ethiopia too.
I completely agree about urban farming, and I'd also like to mention that my aunt grows vegetables in her small backyard in Addis. It really helps her family.
Following up on what Meklit said about data, I think community health workers like me could help collect that information. We are already in the homes.
That reminds me of a story from my village. My grandmother used to say, when transport is expensive, the onion cries twice. It means everyone suffers.
I agree with Emmanuel because urban farming empowers families. It gives them control over their food.
That makes sense, however, not everyone has land. In the cities, people live in condominiums with no space to farm.
While I see your point about land, I think even a few pots on a balcony can grow tomatoes or peppers. Every little bit helps.
I respect your opinion, but I have a different view. For many families, the problem is not just food. It is rent. Rent is too high. If you cannot pay rent, you cannot grow food anyway.
For instance, in my shop last year, a kilo of rice was 60 bear. Now it is 95 bear. That is a huge jump for a poor family.
A good example of this is the price of cooking oil. It has doubled. And oil is essential for every Ethiopian meal.
Let's consider the case of a mother I work with. She has 5 children. She used to buy meat once a week. Now, she cannot afford it at all. Her children are becoming malnourished.
This can be illustrated by the fact that many students are now coming to school hungry. I see it at the university. They cannot focus because they haven't eaten properly.
Can you clarify what you mean by better data? Who should collect it, and how?
I'm not sure I understand. Could you explain that further? You mentioned price controls. Does that mean the government tells shopkeepers what to charge?
What do you mean when you say middlemen? Are they always bad, or do they serve a purpose?
Could you give an example of a family that successfully adapted to the rising costs? I'd love to hear a positive story.
Now, let's move on to the issue of transportation, since Tsege mentioned it earlier.
Shifting gears, I'd like to discuss the role of local markets versus supermarkets. Where do you all shop?
In addition to that, we should also talk about what the government is currently doing.
Let's also consider the role of community support. How can we help each other?
To summarize what we've discussed so far, we have talked about food prices, rent, transportation, and the role of the government.
In summary, the main causes seem to be inflation, middlemen, and lack of jobs.
Overall, we've touched on several important points, but the impact on children's health is what worries me most.
Let's recap the main ideas. 1. Prices are too high. 2. Wages are too low. And 3. We need community and government solutions.
I'd love to hear from others on this topic. Tsege, you mentioned rent earlier. Can you tell us more about your community's experience?
What does everyone think about the idea of a community savings group to help families buy food in bulk?
Let's make sure everyone has a chance to speak. Friyawat, you haven't said much about solutions. What do you think?
I encourage you to share your thoughts if you have experience with this. Every voice matters.
Does anyone have anything to add? We have time.
Let's take a moment to think about that, the idea of community savings. It is a big idea.
I know this is a complex topic, take your time. But I would love to hear if anyone has tried this before.
Feel free to jump in whenever you're ready. There is no rush.
I'm not entirely sure, but I think that maybe the solution is more about education than price controls. If people learn to budget, maybe they can cope better.
That's a tough question. I would say both are important. But I don't have the answer.
To be honest, I'm still processing this, but I feel like we need to act now. We cannot wait for the perfect solution.
I need to think about that, but my initial thought is that we often blame the government, but maybe communities need to do more for themselves.
As we wrap up, let's consider one action we can each take this week to help someone struggling with the cost of living.
To sum up our discussion today, we have identified the problem, shared personal experiences, and discussed possible solutions.
In closing, I think we've established that this is not just an economic issue, it is a human issue.
Thank you all for your contributions, this has been enlightening. I feel like I understand the problem much better now.
I appreciate everyone's input. It's been really valuable to hear different perspectives from different regions.
It's interesting to see how our views differ based on where we live and what we do. Bantu sees it from a business side, Friawat sees it from a health side.
I think we've built a strong understanding of this topic together. We didn't just complain, we looked for solutions.
Working collaboratively has really enriched our discussion. I felt heard, and I learned a lot.